speaker to begin. Thank you.
Mia, talk about the different tomato processing technologies, which common forms of processed tomatoes. So, into the different technologies, the machine.
Mr. Rahul, sorry to interrupt. Your voice is breaking when you slightly move away. Just try to adjust now. Maybe you can come little more front. You're using any?
I'm using a speaker.
Slightly it breaks when you're speaking. We can hear 2-3 words and it breaks.
Video required to be kept on because possibly that is taking up a lot of bandwidth.
And now it is clear. You continue. If there is a problem, I will tell you that time you can off the video. Okay. No, Mr. Rahul, we are not able to hear anything. Maybe you off the video.
So possibly, yeah.
You off the video now. When you are answering the questions, that time we can on the video. Okay. Put your slides in a slideshow mode.
Is it better?
Yeah, now it is better. Okay. You can
with
start
the internet
now.
Since today morning. I'm really sorry for that.
That's okay. You can start now, sir.
Different tomato processing technologies. Tomato is grown in India in fairly large quantities. India is one of the largest producers of tomato, and tomato processing in India is picking up. So in the last few years, I would say in the last 10 years or so, the number of plants which are involved in tomato processing, the quantity must have more than doubled. So it's a fairly hot area in which people are making investments. And one of the big reasons why this is happening is that the price of tomato in India is very competitive. It's much more competitive than you find in other places in the world. So that is why there is a growing interest in tomato processing technologies. Today, I'm going to talk about the different tomato processing technologies and the machines which are involved in it, the most common products that you can make out of it, and what is the kind of investment that you need to make if you want to set up a plant for tomato processing. Here I'm talking about the different popular forms of processed tomatoes. So if you are using raw tomatoes as the base product, then the most common form of processing that you might undergo is to make tomato puree. Now, tomato puree is essentially tomato pulp, which is concentrated, and it is then sold to different parties. So you can sell it to caterers, you can sell it to large hotels, you can sell it to large companies which are involved in making tomato ketchup. So all these kinds of people could be your potential customers. So tomato puree is essentially the most common form of processing tomatoes. The next most common form is tomato ketchup. Now, tomato ketchup can be made in two ways. Either you can make tomato ketchup directly from raw tomatoes, or you can use tomato puree or tomato paste as a base product, and then make tomato ketchup from these base products. So tomato ketchup is a fairly standard product. Most people have tomato ketchup as part of their daily consumption. It's a fairly staple kind of a product which has been, and it is the day by day the consumption of tomato ketchup is also increasing. So a lot of people who would be setting up tomato ketchup plants. Fairly large in size. So if you have a capacity of 5,000 kgs per hour or more, then you set up a tomato paste plant. The output which you have, that is concentrated tomato pulp. It is fairly, the concentration is fairly high. And if you are looking at exports, or if you are looking at targeting some of the large for tomato ketchup in India, then you should target at setting up a tomato paste plant. Another very popular form, day by day, the consumption of tomato powder in various ingredients is increasing. For example, you would have seen Knorr or other brands which are, or Knorr or Maggi or these products which make ready-made tomato soup. So for that, one of the essential ingredients is tomato powder, and the production of powder is increasing by leaps and bounds in India. Form is fresh tomatoes. So if you make really good quality, if you are growing really good quality tomatoes, then, and if you want to sell the tomatoes in the fresh form, you need to do some kind of a basic processing before you can sell it. So common form of processing. Slide I've talked about the popular forms of tomatoes. Now we will look at the technology behind it. So if you want to process tomato puree, what is the kind of technology which is used in it? What kinds of machinery are involved? And what does the plant overall look like? So if you want to set up a factory, all of these points in the next few slides. Processing. Here, tomato.
Mr. Rahul, your audio, we are not able to hear you. Mr. Rahul, we have lost your audio.
Just give me 1 minute.
Yeah. Mr. Rahul, you're available?
Am I audible now?
Yeah, now you're audible. You can speak. Mr.
Tomato.
Rahul?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, now I am able to hear when you're speaking on the topic. Now, as you speak, your voice goes off. Now you proceed. We'll see.
Okay. All right. So I was mentioning earlier, tomato puree is one of the most common forms in which tomato is processed. So if you are having raw tomatoes and if you want to do any kind of processing, possibly tomato puree is the first product that will come to your mind. So what is tomato puree? How is it made? What machines are involved? I'll talk about it in the next few slides. Yeah.
Mr. Rahul, can you please share your screen? You have stopped sharing the screen. We are not able to see your presentation. Yeah.
Okay.
Please proceed.
Okay. On the screen, you can see a layout of the tomato puree processing line. So there are a few machines which are involved. I will talk about these machines in brief. So first we have a washer. A washer is a machine in which you are washing your product. So the tomatoes are getting washed in this machine. So any product which comes from the farm, etc., you expect some amount of dirt to be there on the product. So you need to clean the dirt. For that, we have the washing machine. Product goes to the inspection conveyor, inspection of the sorting conveyor. Here, the basic inspection of the tomatoes take place, and the tomatoes which are rotten or which are to be discarded, that can happen at this stage. So only the tomatoes which are good enough to be processed further, those pass through this field, and the ones which we have to discard, they are separated from the line. After the inspection conveyor, the product goes to the elevator. The elevator is just a machine to take the product from the ground level up to a certain elevation. So the elevator here is taking the product up to a certain height. From there, it goes to a system called as the hot break system. Here we crush the tomatoes, and as soon as we crush it, we raise the temperature to 90 degrees centigrade. So that we can retain the pectin and other important enzymes in the tomato pulp. After hot breaking, the product goes to the pulper. So in the pulper, we separate the seeds and the skin from the tomato pulp. And what we have is clarified tomato pulp. So essentially the seeds and the skin are separated. And what we have is the pulp of tomatoes. Now this pulp is very thin. It's not viscous at all. The concentration of that is just 4-degree bricks. When we say 4-degree bricks, we mean just 4% solid content and 96% water. So we can imagine that the product is fairly free flowing. It's not viscous at all. It is not possible to sell the product which has such high amount of water content, because essentially we want to sell the solid content of tomatoes, not water. So what we are doing after that is we are evaporating the water as much as possible so that it can be converted into tomato puree. So normal tomato pulp is at 4-degree Brix, that is 4% solids and 96% water. And tomato puree is at 12-degree Brix. So we have 12% of tomato solids and we have 88% of water. That is, we are evaporating and we are making the concentration of tomato 3 times, from 4-degree Brix to 12-degree Brix. Once we have the tomato, so you see these vessels here. In these vessels, the evaporation and the concentration of the tomato pulp takes place. And the output which we get from here is going to be tomato puree. So tomato puree, once it is prepared in these vessels, then it is transferred by a pump to a tank, and from there we can take it to whatever packaging machine we want. We'll talk about each of these machines. We'll talk about the washer, inspection conveyor, elevator. We'll talk about each of these machines. Screen, you can see the image of a washer machine. So in the washer machine, essentially we have a tank. In this tank, we have water. This water is agitated, or we create bubbles in this water with the help of a blower. So with this pipeline, we create agitation in the tank. With this agitation, the dirt which is there in the tomatoes, that gets loosened and it gets dissolved in the water. There is another pump which is recirculating water at very high pressure. So the tomatoes which are there at the end, they are pushed with the help of water pressure, and then they go to a takeoff conveyor from where it is discharged to the next machine. During discharge, before discharge, we give another spray of fresh water before it goes to the next machine. So this is an image of a tomato washer installed in a tomato processing plant. So you can see these bubbles which are created in the washing tank. With the help of these bubbles, as I mentioned earlier, the tomato is cleaned completely. Then it goes on this takeoff conveyor. On the takeoff conveyor, we have another spray of fresh water before it gets discharged to the inspection conveyor machine. This is the inspection conveyor. This is a 3-lane conveyor in which the essential purpose of this conveyor is to separate the raw tomatoes, the good tomatoes from the rotten ones, or the ones which we don't have to use for further processing. So the sorting is done manually, and we have workers who are standing on both sides of the conveyor, and they inspect each and every product, and the ones which are to be discarded, they are thrown through these waste pockets. Inspection conveyor is installed in the line. After the washer, it comes over here. It's normally a 3-lane conveyor. Product is received in the central lane. The accepted product is kept in the 2 side lanes, and the discarded product can be thrown out from the waste pockets. Where the product goes with the help of an elevator to the hot break system. So the elevator is essentially a belt, which is normally plastic modular, made of polypropylene, which is food grade. From here, the product from the ground level, we take the product up to a certain height so that it gets discharged on the pressure of the brake system. So since the hot brake system is at a height of about 2 or 2.5 meters, we need to have this machine to take the product to the desired height. Plant, so elevator, which will take the product to the hot brake system. With the help of a chute, we take it to the hot brake system. Brake system in tomatoes, this is an important step or an important process which has to be followed when we are processing tomatoes. So essentially, what hot braking means is, as soon as the tomatoes is crushed, instantaneously we raise the temperature to 90 degrees centigrade. Why is it important to raise it instantaneously to 90 degrees centigrade? Because this will help in retaining the pectin in the product. And why is pectin important? Now, pectin essentially helps in binding the tomato pulp together. Now, if you have seen ads of tomatoes, we have generally seen that people try to show how viscous their product is, or how well the product is holding itself. Now, that is essentially achieved with the help of pectin. And if we have to retain pectin in the tomato pulp, we have to ensure that we do hot breaking of tomatoes. So this process is essentially about retaining the pectin in the pulp. So there's a crusher. So the tomatoes, after coming from the elevator, goes by the chute to the crusher. The crushed tomatoes goes in this closed tank. From this closed tank, the product is recirculated with the help of this heat exchanger. In this heat exchanger, the steam is passed on the outside and the product passes through tubes. So as soon as the product is crushed, it falls in this tank, and because we are passing it with a very high speed pump, the temperature is instantaneously raised to 90 degrees centigrade. The product goes to the pulper. This is again an important machine which is part of this line. And in the pulper machine, we essentially separate the seeds of tomatoes and the skin of tomatoes, and the output that we get is tomato pulp. Now, normally, this is a two-stage machine. So in the first stage, we have coarse pulping, wherein the seeds are separated. And in the second stage, which is fine pulping, the tomatoes is separated. And the output, we get it from the bottom, and it is collected in a tank below. What we have as the output is tomato pulp. Pulper is installed as part of the plant. So we have a coarse pulper and a fine pulper placed one below the other. The output tomato pulp is collected in this tank below, which is a pulp collection tank. And then with the help of a screw pump, we can take it for further processing. We have to standardize the pulp. At times we need to add certain ingredients. Suppose if you have to make tomato ketchup, you will have to add a lot of ingredients. You will have to add spices, you will need to add sugar syrup, you will need to add preservatives. Now, all of this addition that happens in these standardization tanks. So once we have the pulp, we standardize the pulp, or we make all the pulp alike in terms of properties. So that standardization happens in these tanks. So once the pulp is standardized, then we take it for concentration in order to make tomato puree. Now, how does concentration happen? So concentration is basically just heating. You're just evaporating water from the tomato pulp, and you're making it thicker, or you're making it more viscous. So tomato puree is essentially a viscous tomato pulp. So how do we do this evaporation? The evaporation can be done in various ways. You can either do it in open kettles or in open pans. In open pans, if you do it, the boiling point of the temperature is 100 degrees centigrade, which is the normal boiling point of water. So you boil the product at 100 degrees centigrade in order to evaporate the water. But suppose but what happens if you heat it at 100 degrees centigrade, the properties of the product change. So the more you heat the product, the more it is harmful for the product. So the color of the product changes, the taste of the product changes, and all of these problems are associated with heating of the product. So one of the ways in which this problem is overcome in the industry is by doing the heating under vacuum. If you're doing the heating under vacuum, the boiling point of the temperature becomes 60 degrees centigrade rather than 100 degrees centigrade. Now, because you're boiling the product at 60 degrees centigrade, all the properties of the product
And Mr. Rahul, we lost your audio, Mr. Rahul. Mr. Rahul? Sir, are you connected? Mr. Rahul? Sir, we are not able to hear you. Good evening, participants. The speaker is facing some internet connectivity problem. He's trying to reconnect. Please hold on. Mr. Rahul?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Please
I-
share your
I'm
screen.
yeah, I'm sincere apologies. I'm facing a lot of
That's,
issues with
that's
uh,
okay, sir. You can quickly share the screen and proceed. Yeah, please proceed.
okay, all right. So I was talking about vacuum concentration and the advantages of vacuum concentration. So in the pans that you see in the picture, we can do the concentration of tomato pulp to obtain tomato puree. But this concentration happens under vacuum, which leads to better quality of product. This is how it's installed in the plant, and some of the parts of the vacuum pan can be seen in this image. So we have a drive, we have a steam jacket, we have a structure on which the whole thing is placed, etc. So after tomato puree is made in the vacuum concentration pan, it is transferred to an overhead tank from where it can be filled either in barrels or in whatever form we want. So if you want to do canning, then there are a series of machines which would be required for the canning of the tomato puree, or else we can add preservative and we can fill tomato puree in barrels or in bottles or whatever form we want. But the most common form in which tomato puree is normally sold in the market is either in barrels, which are like 20-liter kind of barrels, or they are canned. The advantage of canning is that if we are doing canning of tomato puree, then we don't need to add preservative in it. So tomato puree is filled in cans, it is seamed, we do a retorting of the cans, and then the canned tomato pulp, tomato puree, can be stored at room temperature for a time period of more than 1 year. Tomato puree and how the processing of tomato puree is done, what machines are involved in, in the processing of tomato puree. Now we come to tomato ketchup, which is possibly after tomato puree the highest form, the highest percentage of tomato processing happens in the form of tomato ketchup. So this is how the line of tomato ketchup looks like. Puree in this kettle, we add sugar syrup. So we make sugar syrup in this section over here. So we sugar is mixed with water. It is filtered with the help of a filter press, and then we store it in a tank. And with the help of a dosing pump, a controlled quantity or the quantity of sugar syrup which we decide, that gets added to the tomato ketchup kettle. You see the tomato ketchup kettle here. Here we in the tomato puree is mixed with sugar syrup. It is mixed with spices. It is mixed with preservative and any other ingredient that we want. All the mixing happens in this kettle. So once the ketchup is prepared, so after the mixing and heating, the ketchup is prepared over here. Then it is transferred to a tank from where it is sent to a machine called as the homogenizer. Now in the homogenizer, what essentially happens is the product is passed through a nozzle at very high pressure so that the product becomes very fine. We don't get any lumps, we don't get any kind of a powdery feeling of tomato. What we have is smooth and refined tomato ketchup. So after homogenization, we are able to achieve that kind of an effect. Once the product is homogenized, it again goes to a storage tank and then it goes for pasteurization. Pasteurization is essentially sterilization of the product, wherein we kill all microorganisms and bacteria, viruses, or whatever are there in the product. All kinds of microorganisms are killed. And that happens by heating the product up to 90 degrees centigrade. Then the pasteurizer, essentially we are heating the product at 90 degrees centigrade in order to kill all microorganisms and sterilize the product. And the output is then taken to a tank from where it can be taken to the packaging line. I'm clear so far, and I hope the people are following me. If there is any place in which you want me to stop or if you want me to repeat, you can please ask me to do so.
Sir, you finish it, sir. You can proceed. Later, we'll take up the questions.
The kettle. So the kettle which we talked about, in which the ketchup is prepared, on which the sugar syrup is prepared. I'll talk about the kettle now. So a kettle is essentially a stainless steel pan It is normally jacketed on the outside with the help of steam, and we have a stirrer in which the mixing of the product happens. And after mixing tomato puree with sugar syrup and spices, etc., what we have is ketchup prepared in a kettle. Or if we have to prepare sugar syrup, then we add potable water with sugar, and the mixing and the heating happens in the kettle. So it's essentially used for preparation of ketchup or sugar syrup as part of this line. Most important machine as part of the line is a homogenizer. I briefly talked about what it does. It is used for homogenization of product, that is making the product finer, but that is breaking the large size of products into very small size so that the product becomes smooth and it's very and the overall taste of the product, etc., improves because of it. Machine, which is part of this line, is the pasteurizer. Talked about this in detail. Essentially, there is a tube in which the product, through which there is a pipe through which the product enters the tube. On the outside of the tube, we have a steam jacket. Because the tube is completely under steam pressure, the tube becomes hot. The product comes in contact with the steel surface, the temperature of the product rises. And once it reaches 90 degrees centigrade, we discharge the product. The machine is made in such a way that by the time the product comes till the end, the temperature of the product is raised to 90 degrees centigrade, and then it is discharged for filling and packing. So the pasteurizer machine is installed in the line. Tomato paste processing. Now, tomato paste, if you have a fairly large budget, if you want to set up a large-ish kind of a plant, then tomato paste is what you should consider. Now, generally, tomato is exported in the form of tomato paste. Majorly, it is exported in the form of tomato paste. Tomato puree is a very small percentage of export. Tomato paste is what you use if you have to export or if you have to sell to a multinational company or a fairly large company which is into making of tomato ketchup. Because for making tomato ketchup, tomato paste is used as a raw material in most cases. So, what does a tomato paste plant look like? So, essentially, many of the machines that we have talked about earlier in this presentation, the same machines would be required. So, the one which I've highlighted in the green box, the same machines are used in a tomato paste plant as well. What differs in the tomato paste plant is the way in which we do the concentration of tomato pulp. So, in tomato puree, as we had noted earlier, the concentration is 12 degree Brix. In case of tomato paste, the concentration is between 28 to 36 degree Brix. That is, the product is concentrated up to 7 to 9 times. That is the amount of water evaporation which we need to achieve in order to make tomato paste. And the standard vacuum fans, which we had seen earlier, so these are not effective in concentrating the product up to these high levels. So what we need these are the additional machines which we would need in order to process tomato paste. We will need a multi-effect evaporator because the pans that we see here, these are single effect evaporators. These can only concentrate up to 20 degree Brix. If you have to go to 30 degree Brix or higher, you need a multi-effect evaporator. And then normally the filling of these of tomato paste is done in aseptic form. So we use an aseptic filling machine to fill the tomato paste into barrels. Why is aseptic filling so important? Aseptic filling is important because in aseptic filling, you don't need to add any preservative. And normally adding any form of preservative in tomatoes or tomato pulp is frowned upon. It's not looked upon kindly, especially if you're looking at exports. That is why most people invest a lot of money in setting up an aseptic filling machine. So this is what a multi-effect evaporator looks like. I won't go into the explanation of the process of how the concentration happens. All I would like to say right now is that it passes from one set of tubes to another. There are multiple tubes which are there in each of these calandrias, and the product, after passing down from, it enters at this point, and by the time it falls down, we are able to achieve the level of concentration of tomato pulp which we are looking at. This is what an aseptic filling machine would look like. An aseptic filling machine, as I had mentioned earlier, if you are doing aseptic filling, you don't need to add any preservatives. And how are we able to achieve that? We are able to achieve that because the product always remains sterilized. So before filling, there is a sterilizer which is attached to this machine. We sterilize the product, that is, we clean the product from all microorganisms by heating it up to 90 degrees centigrade. And then we don't even allow air to enter into the system. The whole system is under vacuum. No air, no water, any form of external stimuli are completely avoided. And then it is taken directly for filling, and the product is filled in bag and drums of 200 bag and drums of about 200 kg size. The second last important form of processing of tomatoes is tomato powder. Again, this is a very fast growing line. And in the last at least 5 or 6 years, I have seen at least about 10 to 12 plants for tomato powder being set up. It's a fairly fast growing field, and many people are now looking at tomato powder as a product which they can sell to, uh, which which is widely accepted in the market. Again, for tomato paste processing, as I had highlighted earlier, the processing machines more or less remain the same. The ones that we had talked about, the washer, the inspection conveyor, the elevator, the hot plate system, etc., all of these machines remain the same. The only additional machine which we need to add to this line in order to make tomato powder is the spray dryer. A spray dryer is essentially happens in a spray dryer is what we have is concentrated tomato pulp, and that passes through a nozzle at very high pressure, and the whole chamber is heated with the help of hot gases. So this is what a spray dryer would look like. The product enters from the top, and by the time it drops till the end of this cone, or we have the final output, which in our case is tomato. The last form of tomato processing, or the last form in which tomatoes is sold, is fresh tomatoes. Now, if you're making really good quality tomatoes and if you want to sell it in the market uh, in the fresh form, this is the kind of line which you can always do that, and this is the kind of line you would have seen in several supermarkets. Tomatoes are sold in the packed form, like they would be packed in stretch films, or they would be some kind of a vacuum packing of the tomatoes would be done. So if you grow really good quality tomatoes, and if you want to do just sorting and grading of tomatoes, you can do that as well. And these are the machines on the slide. You can see the machines which are required for that. So what you have is a sorting conveyor. In the sorting conveyor, essentially the sorting of the tomatoes is done. The the waste or the discarded tomatoes can be separated, and only the products or only the tomatoes which are acceptable and which we want to take it for further processing, only those are selected. Then it goes to a vegetable washer machine. We had seen the vegetable washer machine earlier, in which we wash the product thoroughly, and it is cleaned of all forms of dirt. After we clean it, then it is taken to a brush washer wherein the brushing of the product takes place. So any form of water which is there on the surface of the tomatoes, so that gets cleaned completely. Then we do some kind of a hot water treatment. And that's again in order to ensure that if there are any contamination, etc., um, on the surface of the product, that gets cleaned completely. So hot water treatment of the tomatoes is done. And after doing the hot water treatment, we dry it because we cannot, if there are water droplets on the surface, we will not be able to sell it in that form. So essentially, there is a dryer in which the product through which the product is passed, through which the tomatoes are passed, and then the water droplets are removed as much as possible. And what we have is the fresh tomatoes, which can be sold in fresh form in supermarkets or wherever we want to sell them. So, so far we have talked about all the different forms of tomato processing. What are the different outputs that we can get? What is the potential of these products in the market? And what kind of machinery are involved in it? We'll briefly talk about my company now. So my company name is Jwala Techno Engineering Private Limited. We are one of the largest players when it comes to fruits and vegetable processing in India. We are a 25-year-old company. We started in 96. We're more than 25-year-old now. It was started by my father, Mr. Paharia, who has an experience of close to 45 years now in this line. We are known for high quality, high reliability machine. So anywhere in the market, if you check about the reputation of our company, one of the first feedbacks that you would get is they make possibly the best quality machines that you can get from an Indian supplier. We have a full-fledged team of design engineers, production engineers, management professionals, etc. We make these kinds of products. So we make complete lines for frozen fruits and vegetables like green peas, corn, etc. Fruit pulp lines like mango pulp line, guava pulp line, etc. We make complete lines for tomato ketchup puree paste. We make complete lines for ready to serve beverages or juices, ready to eat foods, similar to what MTR does. Uh, we make complete lines for jam processing, for fresh fruits and vegetable processing, material handling, and we also make custom built equipment as per user requirement. This is what our factory looks like. It's spread in an area of 4,500 square meters or 45,000 square feet with a construction of 15,000 square feet. We have an office in Mumbai city. And we've exceeded the time. So one of our strengths is that we have a very strong design team. We use 3D software for our design. We do CNC cutting and laser cutting and CNC bending, which leads to precision fabrication. We use components of internationally reputed brands, and the fit and finish of our machine is considered to be the best in the industry. These are some of the players, some of the large players in India to whom we have supplied our machines. So Pagro Frozen Foods is India's largest player when it comes to frozen fruits and vegetables. Capricorn, one of the large players when it comes to tomato processing. Gujarat Agro Infrastructure Mega Food Park is a mega food park initiative set up in Gujarat, etc. We have done a lot of work with MNCs as well. So we supplied a lot of machines to PepsiCo. We've supplied machines to Kellogg's, McCain's, General Mills, etc. So this was all I had to share. Thank you so much for your time and patience. Take any questions if you have them.
Thanks for your presentation, sir. It was very informative and detailed. Can you please, on your video, sir, I'll take up the questions from the participants. Yeah, thank you. The first question is, do you provide any consultancy services? If yes, what type of consultancy service you can provide?
Machinery manufacturing company. So consultancy is not what we do. So if you take machines from us, we will definitely guide any person as to how to go about setting this up, what kind of machines would be involved, etc. But if you want a proper consultation service to prepare a project report, to understand what kind of costs are involved apart from machines, what is the kind of working capital required, I would ideally advise to take the services of a full-time consultant, because that will be very much required if you want to set up a food processing plant.
Okay. There is a question from one of our participants. I will just read it out, sir. I am a mango grower. If I establish this tomato pulp machine, can it be used seasonally for production of mango pulp?
Mango and tomato machines are fairly similar. So if you set up a tomato processing line, almost all the machines which are required for mango processing are already covered in it. So you can always do mango in the same line. It is just that if you are doing mangoes, and if you're doing mangoes in small quantity, the most common form in which it is processed is canned mango pulp. So you'll need to add a few machines for canning of mango pulp. But apart from that, most of the machines are already covered as part of the tomato line.
Okay. And the next question is, how many types of machines you manufacture? What is the starting price of your machine?
Slides, I had covered the kinds of machines which we manufacture. So our scope is restricted to fruits and vegetable processing. I don't know if I can pull that up again. Just give me a second if I can share my screen. Like these. So we make machines for frozen fruits and vegetables, for fruit pulp processing, for mango, etc. Tomato ketchup puree lines, juice processing lines, jam processing lines, etc. But a majority of our business comes from frozen fruit and pulp processing, fruit pulp processing, and tomato ketchup. The first three line items which have been listed.
Okay. The next question is, what about ongoing repair and service of your equipment? How is that carried out?
The machines is going to be our responsibility only. So for the first couple of years, any issues that is...
Just a minute, sir. Yeah, you proceed, sir.
The service of our machines is our responsibility. So for the first 1 year, any issue related to service is going to be handled by us free of cost. And subsequently, if any issues are faced, again, we are always we can always provide the service of our technicians, and we are just a phone call away. Just a phone call, and our technicians would be there in order to handle any kind of issues that you face in our machines.
Okay. Does government provide any subsidy for setting up tomato processing units?
Yeah, subsidies. In fact, the government has a lot of thrust. They have given a lot of importance to food processing sector. So if you have heard about so in Ministry of Food Processing, they have several schemes which are running at any point of time. For if you want to set up a food processing unit, so one of the most common ones is the Pradhan Mantri Kisan Sampada Yojana, I think PMKSY. So as part of that scheme you get 35% capital subsidy for setting up of the plant. So 35% of the total machinery cost is given as subsidy. So that is by the central government. And generally, we have seen that most states have subsidies over and above what the central government provides. So we can always check with the respective state government agency what kind of subsidies they are providing for setting up the food processing plants.
Okay. And you supply your equipments all over India, or you are restricted to any part of the country?
We have supplied machines in almost every part of India. So we have supplied machines in Punjab, we have in Uttarakhand, and we have supplied machines in Tamil Nadu, in Karnataka, in Andhra. So all across India, our supplies have been there.
Okay. Can you just give reference of any of your clients who are running this tomato processing unit very successfully, sir?
Is
Instantly, if you
again
tell.
yes. So in fact, right now we have completed a fairly large project. We have completed a 3 tons per hour fully automatic tomato puree processing plant that has been set up in Odisha at near Cuttack. The name of the company is Jai Bharat Spices Private Limited. We have also supplied complete tomato processing line to Gujarat Agro Infrastructure Mega Food Park. We have supplied a complete line to Dela Foods, which is based out of Ratlam in Madhya Pradesh. We have supplied a complete line to Samriddhi Foods, which is based out of Kashipur in Uttarakhand. Uh, these are a few names that I can think of right now.
Okay, okay,
But
that's right.
a detailed list, if required, I can always take it.
Okay, okay. We'll share your contact details. Our participants can get in touch with you, sir.
Great.
One of our participants is asking, similar to tomato, will you also provide machines and guide for fresh mango fruits?
On this platform itself, I had given a presentation on mango processing. Like this was about tomato processing. I had given a presentation on mango processing, where again I had covered uh, all the different aspects of mango processing technologies. So be it canned mango pulp or aseptic mango pulp or fresh mangoes, all of these were covered as part of that presentation. If required, I can share that presentation again. But specifically, if we talk about fresh mangoes, from India, fresh mango exports has been uh, uh, has been one of the significant components of the overall processed fruits that we sell. And fresh mangoes is definitely the largest in terms of the amount in amongst all fruits that we sell. So if we have to process fresh mangoes, again the line would be very similar. If I can just pull up the slide once again. Uh, line which we will have. So what we need to do is have a basic sorting conveyor in which we are going to separate the rotten mangoes or the mangoes which we don't have to process further. We will have to wash the mangoes thoroughly. So the washing would happen here, and then another important step is to do hot water treatment of mangoes. So essentially, the mangoes are passed through boiling water for a certain amount of time in order to sterilize it completely. So once the sterilization is complete, and after passing it through the hot water system, then we do some kind of a basic grading. Now the grading can be done with automatic machines, or they can be done manually with the help of labor. And then we need some kind of a drying system before which it can be packed. So we don't need a lot of machines. Essentially, a sorting conveyor, a washer, and a hot treatment kind of machine. So if you have these three critical machines, then we can do processing of fresh mangoes as
Okay. I'll move on to the next question, sir. Who are your typical customers who take up tomato processing machine?
uh, who set up tomato processing plants. They are essentially entrepreneurs uh, who live in areas in which tomato is grown in very large numbers. So in India fortunately is a country in which tomato is grown in large quantities in several states. So so most people who have set up plants of tomato processing, who have sourced machines from us, they are staying in a belt, or they're staying in an area in which is a major tomato growing area, and where we have tomatoes at very less prices. So during the season where we have tomatoes at say 1 rupee or 2 rupees, and it is very difficult for the farmer to sell at these prices. So what they do, either the farmers form a group and they set up a processing plant of their own, or some entrepreneur in that region, they set up a plant. So because tomato is available at very cheap rates during peak season, so they buy tomatoes at huge quantities during peak season and then they use it for processing. So the essential profile of the person who sets up a plant is one of the most important, most common factors is the person stays in a belt where tomato is grown in huge quantities. And secondly, during the season, the price of the tomatoes comes down substantially, because of which they are able to do the processing.
Okay. The next question is, what is the optimum size of a tomato processing unit in terms of tons per day process and the cost of the same?
Machines are designed on per hour basis. So if we talk about per hour basis, these plants start from 300 kgs per hour. Okay, so the starting capacity is 300 kg per hour of tomatoes. The approximate cost of machines for this kind of plant is between 30 and 35 lakhs. If you set up a 500 kg per hour plant, the cost of the plant would be somewhere between 40 and 50 lakhs. So this is the kind of plant cost that these are the kind of costs which are involved. But if you have a higher budget, if you want to spend say 6 crore rupees, then you can set up a 5 ton per hour plant, 5 ton per hour tomato paste processing plant as well. Capacity can be anything depending upon the kind of investment that we want. It starts from 30 lakhs, but it can go up to 30 crores as well. It all depends what size of plant we want to set.
Okay, okay. Sir, can you tell us about your education and career background, sir?
I've done my engineering and mechanical field from Bombay University, from a college, DJ Sanghvi College of Engineering in Bombay. After that, I've done my MBA, Masters in Business Administration, from Jamnalal Bajaj Institute of Management Studies, which is again based out of Mumbai. So our company is about 25 years old. My father started this company. My father is also an engineer. He used to work in a multinational company, which was into food processing company, and that is how we have the base knowledge about starting. He had the base knowledge about starting this business, and I joined him about 12 years back in this business.
Okay, that's very nice to hear, sir. I'll take up the last question, sir. According to you, what are the major reasons for failure of tomato processing unit?
Failures in the sense, in fact, in the last few years, we have seen that tomato processing is increasing in India at a very fast rate. One of the reasons why it is becoming more successful is because the earlier what used to happen, say about 10 years back, what used to happen was that almost all the major processors in India used to get paste from China, because the paste which you used to get from China was very cheap. But in the last 5 to 6 years, what we have seen that the cost of the paste of which we used to get from China has increased, and Indian paste is now much more cheaper. Or Indian paste or Indian puree is now cheaper than China. Now, because of that, at least all Indian companies, whichever large Indian company that you can think of, be it Dabur, be it Hindustan Lever, or uh, be it the Maggie Group, etc., the Nestle Group, all of these companies, they have started sourcing the paste from India itself. That is why the demand for tomato processing in India has risen substantially in the last 5 or 6 years, because the market has opened up essentially because of Chinese paste being more expensive. Now, the reasons why it could fail is uh, uh, essentially it boils down to the way the business is run. So, a few bad business decisions, for example, not procuring tomato at the right price, or uh, suppose if the crop fails completely and the price of tomato goes up a lot, then you're not able to produce enough, or you're not able to achieve the kind of quantities that you had anticipated or envisaged. So those are essentially the reasons. So a few bad business decisions here and there, but overall, I can say it's a very promising and a prospective business. And many people are now getting into tomato processing, from very small capacities of 300 kgs per hour to very large capacities of 10 tons per hour and more.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. We have now completed the round of questions. On behalf of agricultureinformation.com, we would like to thank Mr. Rahul Paharia for the talk and for answering the questions in detail. I'd like to also thank all the participants in the meeting. This meeting will now be closed.